with my daughter, I kind of did not go to hospital, did not look for a gynecologist because if had I gone to a hospital again, had I gone to a gynecologist again, they would not have waited for me to give birth to her.
This is the Birth Agni podcast, the fire that brings us alive, that burns myths and opens a channel of authentic natural birth stories. This show debunks the many myths of the medicalized births, showcases the plethora of choices a pregnant couple can make to embark on their empowered birth journey. I'm Divya Kapoor, a certified birth and lactation counselor and an aspiring traditional birth attendant. Let's get the flames blazing high. Before the recording of the podcast, Vinita ji sends me a picture of a newspaper article from July 1994, which features her birth story with her picture in the center, which is the picture that you see on the cover of this podcast. That entire article, when I went through that and my husband went through that, there were so many things in that article that felt like it is from today. And it's talking about a birth movement. And in fact, my husband, when he started reading, he didn't realize that the article was from 1994. And I said, look at the date. And he was like, whoa. The headline in the center of the article says, Born Free. The title says, it was the only way known 2 generations ago. Is natural childbirth at home making a comeback? Meher meets women known to further the movement. And it hosts her story and a few things that I want to particularly read out from this article. Disillusioned by a typical cesarean section delivery of her son 8 years ago, publisher Vinita Mansata opted to have her next baby at home. Refusing to undergo any prior treatment or barrage of tests generally listed for expectant mothers, she was aware she had commenced labor when she decided to drop Rishabh to school and shop for the day's groceries before returning to Sitabai, the dai in her apartment. The second birth convinced her that a natural delivery, preferably at home, is the logical way nature ordained human life to begin. She says, medicine cannot accept simplicity, and it intervenes to complicate matters and make out that to choose to bear a child like this is to risk either suicide or infanticide. And the article further goes on to say that many maternal and infant mortality statistics trace their origin to operation theatres of hospitals rather than the peaceful ambience of home. And in gist, it says that bringing birth to hospitals has statistically changed nothing. And that's what we always talk about on this podcast. And that's what I believe in. So now let's hear from Vinita ji herself the story of birth with her first and second. Please tell us about yourself.
Um, yeah, so I'm a mother of two children. Um, my son is in his 30s, uh, late 30s now, I would say. He turned 38 last month, and my daughter is 29. Yeah, I have a small publishing activity, and I also run a bookstore. Care Books is the name of the publishing activity, and Care Bookstore is the name of the bookstore. So the bookstore has more than just books on ecological issues. There's a selection of titles that I feel people should read than a collection that sells. Um, so I suppose you would like to know how I gave birth to my children. So my was born by C-section. Mm, I felt quite unnecessarily. This was 38 years ago because we were looking for a doctor, a gynecologist, who believed in natural birth, and I would not need to be cut up for a cesarean. So, while looking, so in the 6th month, I think 6th month it was that we decided to have a doctor, a gynecologist for the delivery of our child, who was recommended by a family doctor. we kind of sort of accepted her. I mean, decided on her, not accepted, decided on her because I
Mm.
got a little tired of looking for a gynecologist who believed in natural birth. But ultimately, on the day of delivery, uh, she said that there was fetal distress and took me for an emergency
Mm.
operation. So I had a vertical incision, which is quite rare. That vertical incisions had stopped; they were only horizontal. But she said there was fetal distress, and I did tell her at that time that I was getting contractions. There
Mm.
is no need to take me
Mm.
for a C-section. But she said, don't blame me if something happens. Uh, and my husband and mother-in-law were there present. And she said, I am not going please don't tell me anything if something goes wrong. Since she's asking for a natural birth, but it's not going to be possible. Uh, so they agreed to letting me get operated. So, and I had this emergency, like I said, operation.
Mm. Did she kind of increase the pains at any time when you were in your natural labor?
Increase the
Pains, like kind of give you a drip or something to.
yes, yes, yes. She did. She I've forgotten this. She did induce labor. She
Mm.
did.
Mm.
And at that time, before she did that, I was reading Childbirth Without Fear, pacing up and down, and reading Granted Degrees, I mean, Childbirth Without Fear. So confident that I would have a natural birth, but it did not happen.
Mm.
And naturally, I was disappointed after it happened. Uh, Questioning it, I felt it was unnecessary. Some of the feeling I got at that time. Perhaps one is more sensitive during that time. I felt that the gynecologist wanted to uh, rush to go for another appointment. Just a feeling. I mean, not that I was told, but it's a feeling that I got that she wanted to rush to the next patient, if I may say patient. Um,
Mm.
and I was taken for an emergency.
Mm.
So my son was born and all that and everything. Fortunately, he was born in Calcutta, by the way. I was in Calcutta at that time. When he was born, they encouraged breastfeeding. The hospital there, they did encourage. So they brought the child, and of course, the child was not kept next to me, but they did bring the child from time to time. So that happened quite well, and he was suckling. So the breastfeeding feeding part went off well. When
Okay.
I've heard of cases where the child is kept away from the mother and is not able to suckle, so that did not happen. Also,
Okay.
fortunately, at that time, the BCG vaccination was banned. I think there was
Banned.
some banned. If they are, I don't, the reasons are not very clear. Might have been some defective lots. So he was not given the BCG, which was mandatory when children were born in hospitals. In fact, all of
Mm.
us have received the BCG. All of us used to go around with two dots on our arms,
Yeah.
and so he did not receive the BCG. Um, So it was like one month I came home, there was breastfeeding, and the usual food was given to me that was given to mother after she gives birth. I did all that which is done traditionally in terms of covering my head and having the food that my mother-in-law decided to give, and my mother had brought with her this pink bone laddu. So all that I was having, it was all very fine. But then this whole issue of vaccination came about. Now, my husband told me at that time, see, this is a scam. Vaccination is a scam. But she's
Oh.
always critical of government and large industry. So I was kind of, torn myself. Um, but we didn't vaccinate him because we were investigating, and he wrote to a lot of organizations, um, the the non-government organizations as well as the medical ones. Uh,
Mm.
just to find out, the truth behind vaccinations.
Right.
And the verdict was split in the sense the ones that came from the medical industry, they all said yes, you need to vaccinate. And from the NGO sector, there was this doubt.
Hmm.
So now there was pressure on me as well. My father-in-law, he kind of pressured me into giving him one DPT shot. So my son has received one DPT shot and two oral folios he has received.
Hmm.
Uh, During that time, he had, I think it was after that, he had what is called conventional diarrhea.
Hmm.
And when he had diarrhea, uh, the family doctor prescribed medicine. So the medicine was bought. Uh, I naturally wanted to check what the ingredients of the medicine were. So I looked at the bottle, and in very fine print was written, "An overdose is detrimental." So I thought to
Hmm.
myself, if an overdose is bad, an underdose can't be any good because it's not the best. So I did not give it to him, and I saw
Hmm.
that the diarrhea petered out on its own.
On its own.
After about a month or so, he had diarrhea again. And now like in retrospect, I kind of wondered if it was the body throwing out, getting rid of the vaccines that that he had received. So this time I did not even look at the bottle. I just waited for the diarrhea to peter out, and it did. So at that time, these words literally ran through my mind that the body follows its own logic of assimilation, digestion, and excretion. Anything else is interference in the natural process of the body from finding its equilibrium.
Hmm.
And the realization came that you do not need to do anything. See, truth, you feel that you've arrived at truth when every part of your being knows this is correct. If
Hmm.
there was a time when I allowed the DPT shot to happen, it's because I was still not. I didn't understand the truth. The truth had not come to me. Now the truth came. So after that, there was no looking back. In the sense, there was no question of vaccinating. Also, the understanding came that an illness peters out and the child is well again. So why give something to stop an illness when it stops on its own? So all this understanding came to me.
Yeah.
So after that, there was no question of vaccination. There was no question of medication also. Both my children have been raised without a drop of medicine. When I say medicine, it's not just allopathy, it's also Ayurveda, homeopathy, Chinese, herbal, or anything. Just believe in the strength and the ability of the body to heal itself. Believe that all action by the body is right action and that one should not do anything for wellness to prevail,
Hmm.
for health to prevail. So it's not that I have not had anxious moments. Every see, children fall ill. Children
Yeah.
fall ill because their bodies are so vibrant that any toxic matter, any morbid matter is not tolerated, and the
Hmm.
body tries to get rid of it. That is why childhood illnesses are so wonderful. Because we don't live in pristine uh, times, and the body does not tolerate morbidity, and it tries to get rid of. Of course, it is in different in 4 5 categories. So it's called measles or chicken pox and mumps, etc. So these are just names that we give depending on the symptoms to the
Right.
illness.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just the body trying to get rid of matter it does not require for its growth and development.
Hmm. I'm
So
sure you
he's had my
spoke.
son.
You also spoke to your children when they were not given, when they were growing up, when they were not being given medicines, how their body was powerful.
They didn't really ask those questions.
Hmm.
They took it in their stride. It was normal for them. Uh,
Hmm.
See, when a child is 3, 4, 5 years old, 5, See, they didn't go to school also at that time.
Mm.
They don't ask these kind of. They don't know anything about medication.
Mm.
They just know what the mother is doing, and that's
Mm.
what I think. I mean, it's later that when they go to school. I mean, both my children went to school. It's not they did not. This is just started later. I didn't want early. Don't like early schooling. So so later, but it is not so much in terms of medication that questions were asked, but in terms of why am I not the only one? Why am I the only one not eating biscuits? And why am I the only one in school who's not given Coke? So those kind of things. The
Mm.
rebellion happened with that. My son,
Yeah.
especially, was the biggest rebel around. He used to say, if it's their whole wheat biscuits, whole wheat bread, I'm not, give me white flour, So
Mm.
I will eat only this white. But just to, I don't know, it's a natural tendency, I suppose, to rebel.
Yeah.
Um, so the rebellion took place on that front, but not on the medication front. That they thought that was what I was doing was normal. Um, Then, in fact, much later, when there was a crisis in sense when my son was not well for quite some time, he himself did not touch any form of medicine because he said, "I've not never had this poison in my life."
Mm.
So that was okay. They kind of I had freedom to do what I wanted to, where they were concerned. The the fear was with the other members of the family. So especially my mother, with my mother, like I had to not tell her the truth, not tell her that I'm not medicating, I'm not vaccinated. So in fact, there was this tie-up between my mother and father-in-law to get my children vaccinated, because of which she's had that one DPT shot and two oral polio. DPT, yeah, and two oral polio.
Mm.
So, so we grew up like any normal child. We used to play a lot, and uh, yeah, so I used to try to keep him away, of course, from junk food as much as possible. I said, "You're allowed." By junk food, I meant chips, uh,
Mm.
mainly chips. I think we still love eating chips. So I used to say, "You're allowed once a week." Then he'd form with me. It was once a week on a Wednesday. He was allowed, and then we formed partnerships with other members of the family. So he got his junk on Monday from someone, Tuesday from someone else. So they know how
Yeah.
to kind of find their way around.
Yeah.
Um, so uh, yeah, that is how it was with my son. With my daughter, she was born 8 years after my son was born.
Mm.
In those eight
Which
years, we
year
had
was it? Just for the listeners to have a context.
1994. My daughter was born 1994,
1994. Yeah.
March 8th March.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 March 1994, on International Women's Day, she was born. So in those 8 years, we had learnt a lot in terms of what, in terms of diet, in terms of breastfeeding, in terms of not medicating. Um,
Mm.
so with my daughter, I kind of did not go to hospital, did not look for a gynecologist, because if had I gone to a hospital again, had I gone to a gynecologist again, they would not have waited for me to
Mm.
give birth to her.
Mm.
It's only in the seventh month that I had to take a trip. I was in Bombay and I had to take a trip to Calcutta. So my mother said, "You cannot go unless you get some kind of an insurance from a gynecologist." Which I did then. I haven't been to a gynecologist, that I did tell her. If they allow you, if she allows you or he allows you, then you can go. So we
Mm.
met this gynecologist couple when I was in my seventh month, and I told them that I was interested in natural birth. They completely vetoed this. They talked about one of their uh, births, one of the women who had come to them uh, to, for birthing. that she had a C-section first earlier, and they had to perform a hysterectomy on the operation table itself. So
Mm.
they said if you are very keen, then you should keep two relatives of your blood group ready at the time of entering into labor. And they gave me a full list of tests to do, a barrage of tests to perform, and said, please do this.
Mm.
So
They
I
scared
told my
you.
husband
They tried
to
to
do the
scare
tests.
you. Mm.
Hmm? A lot of tests. I don't remember what tests they were,
Mm-hmm.
but there were blood tests and whatnot. So I said, if I don't believe in these tests, and I don't believe what happens to my blood once it's out of my body and it's put into test tubes and the way it's analyzed. If I don't believe in that, why should I do those tests? I didn't do any of the tests.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And you had no
Now,
ultrasounds throughout. You never visited a
yes,
doctor.
I'll just come to that. So
Hmm.
again, it is my mother because of this trip that I had to take. She said, "You do an ultrasound." I said, "There were no ultrasounds earlier. Why is everybody doing ultrasounds? People,
Mm.
women give birth." She said, "You have to do it." So, because I was 35 plus at that time, and I said, "You didn't do them." She said, "I wasn't 35 plus when I gave my birth to my to all of you." How is that going to change anything anyway? Um, that's my mother and me. So I did one ultrasound, and even now that after that also I felt it was so unnecessary because the guy said the child's head is fixed. The child head is fixed, and you can enter into labor anytime. And that was the most ridiculous thing I've heard because I was feeling fine. I was on this huge food diet, I was eating a lot of fruit, I was feeling healthy, all that. Okay,
Mm.
at my son, after my, I think, visit to Calcutta, after I came back, I started looking for a midwife. So the search for midwife was also an experience because there was no Facebook at that time. There was no internet. So I just went out. And I used to go out, just venture out. And when I heard that there were construction workers who are known to give birth in the house, so I went looking for construction workers, and I met them. And I said, "You give birth to children within the house with the help of a midwife?" She said, "Yes." So the ones I met, yes, we do, but that's in our village, not here.
Mm. Mm.
Then I heard gardeners' wives are known to be midwives. The people who had large, huge gardens, gardens. So I went looking for them. I met one woman. She said that now I have done that, but now I am unable to see properly, so I don't. I'm no longer kind of performing this, helping in births. When so I just wanted to get an understanding of natural childbirth uh, from people who were not spoilt by the system, who
Mm.
still believed in the natural process, and who did not go to the hospitals, etc. So I was meeting vegetable vendors, fruit vendors, just trying to understand it. And I'm telling you that there was this one fruit vendor who had become a friend of mine because I used to buy a lot of fruit from her. She said nobody gives birth, neither midwife nor the doctor. The child is born, is merely hold the child. So that helps. You need to
Mm.
prepare yourself, when you want to give a birth in the natural way, your mind should be kind of convinced that this is the way. So that, and there was another, there was a book that I had read when my son was growing up. It's it was written by a pediatrician, an American pediatrician, who Dr. Mendelson, who wrote this
Mm.
book, How to Raise a Healthy Child in Spite of Your Doctor. He
Mm.
talked about childhood illnesses and said how you do not need to rush to a doctor when there is an illness. But if it carries on, then you go to a doctor. So I won't say he was that radical because he still had that pediatrician training because he did say that okay, if it sort of continues, you go. Well, I feel that you don't need to. This is my understanding. But what the information that should be available is what you should do at that time.
Mm.
Uh, this whole concept of do nothing is not very common. There is always the understanding that there should be something should be done.
Mm.
As my when my son was also growing up, I had read this book, The One Straw Revolution by Masanobu Fukuoka. He was a Japanese farmer who believed in do nothing where farming goes. But it does not concern just farming. It also uh, can be relevant, can be understood in all aspects of life and living, of non-interference. So that also kind of made me feel that the do nothing principle is the best principle.
Mm.
And so he had written, Dr. Mendelssohn had written in his book that hospitals spend a lot of money on equipment and they need to use it. So even if like you don't need to use it, they will want to use it at some point to justify the expense. Uh,
Mm.
so that was there also in my mind. That also kind of made sense to me. That even if I find someone, a gynecologist, who is uh, sensitive to natural births and who understands that the need for it, or will believe in what I feel. Yeah, I mean, the hospital works with at so many levels. So I did not therefore think of a hospital birth. Now during that, I'm saying, where should I birth? I mean, there's no birthing centers. So there was no birth village in Kerala. So I thought, should I go to Hanging Garden? I said, oh no, that might attract a lot of attention. So I gave birth to my daughter in the house itself. My mother-in-law had come for my delivery, and I I did tell her one day before I gave birth, what if I give birth in the house and don't go to hospital once labor starts? So she said, fine. I gave birth to all my children in the house. She said. So she was like, she did not pressure me to go
Yeah.
to hospital.
It was normal for her to do that.
She said, I've given birth to my children in the house. It's fine, she said. We kept it away from my mother because my mother would not have allowed it. She would have come with the policeman to my home and would have dragged me to hospital, knowing my mother. So in the morning on the 7th of March, I leaked, and then I told my husband that I think we need to call the midwife. So he went and called her. We smuggled her into the house, and we had an upstairs and a downstairs, so she was in the downstairs portion of the house. Yes, before that, I must tell you about my experiences, the meeting with the midwife. Before, I did meet her, and how I met her was this friend of mine had given birth in the house as well, and she had got this midwife through her domestic help.
Mm.
So she used to give help women with births in the slum area. So I met her. She was completely illiterate, but she was one of the more intelligent people I've met in my life. She had a quiet intelligence about her. She examined me. Her hands were like a stethoscope, and because of that ultrasound that I had unnecessarily, and I was told that the head was
Fixed,
lowered,
yeah.
head
Mm.
had, was fixed. I said I've been told that the head has is already sort of fixed, and that I can give birth. So she examined me and said, "Why should the head be fixed now? It will get
Mm.
fixed when it's time for the child to come out." Such wrong information and so different.
Yeah.
Then I asked her, I had a C-section, cesarean operation झालं होतं. I had had an operation. And people say that if you have an surgery, then the uterus bag can burst, hmm, when you enter into labor, uh, if you want a natural birth. So she looked at me and said, "What do you think? Do you think your bag will burst?" So I said, "No, I don't think so. I think I'm strong enough, I'm healthy enough that I'll withstand the labor." She said, "Yes, that is it. Then you'll, you will withstand." So she said, "No, then it won't burst. You think so?" So that was the understanding.
Hmm.
So when she came and I started labor, initially it wasn't like it was. The contractions were not that many. They were slow,
Hmm.
but gradually they started coming faster and they were strong. They were powerful.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
she would place her knee in the small of my back to ease out the contractions.
Okay.
Hmm? So they were
Hmm.
quite powerful, and they were, and as time went by, they became more rapid.
Okay.
So the whole of the seventh went by. I thought maybe I'll give birth to her in the evening. It did not happen. The whole night went by.
Hmm.
There was no, she did not emerge. The whole of eighth also went by, almost the whole of eighth. And I was squatting and doing the labor. My whenever there were contractions, I think they were 10 minutes apart later, but they were quite powerful. Uh, so I was squatting and doing them, but eventually my knees had turned into jelly. There was no strength in those knees.
Okay.
And
And
Zui,
the
my daughter,
squatting was the squatting instinctual? Like you
because I was
felt like
squatting on my
squatting?
knees.
Okay.
I was
Because you
squatting
felt
on my
like
knees
doing
at
it,
this.
or
Hmm?
were you like because you felt like doing it, or were you like somebody said like you knew that this is something I can do?
Oh, squatting was something that I had discussed with my friend. I'd read on it. I had
Hmm.
read up a little bit of what's the how one should birth.
Hmm.
Um, yes, so there was some discussion with my friend. I told you the one who had this
Home
midwife,
birth.
this
Hmm.
same midwife. So she did talk about squatting, and also I read a little bit, but it was mainly my friend. I think she said do it squatting, and also the midwife. She also encouraged me to squat. So, like I said, ultimately, finally, when I uh, Zoe was born, when I was lying down, I could not squat anymore. I had really got tired. So,
Hmm.
I there was, by the way, a friend of mine also had come. I was talking to her on the phone. She was a medical doctor, and she asked me, "Should I come?" I said, "Yes, let's do that. That would be nice. Uh, you monitor the heartbeat of the child." So she was monitoring the heartbeat of the baby. Only she was not in the room when my child was born. She was just kind of monitoring the heartbeat and telling me, "Yes, it's okay. I can hear the heartbeat." Um, but it was really the midwife who was with me all the time.
Hmm.
Um, so, so Zoe was born uh, mm, after the 36-hour labor.
Oh. And when the
Uh,
labor began, you didn't call the midwife right away.
yes, when I leaked on the seventh
Okay.
morning, when
Hmm.
I felt I leaked a little bit, and that's when the water bag had not burst. That
Hmm.
happened on the seventh evening. The
Hmm.
water bag burst, I think. I
Hmm.
don't remember right.
Hmm.
Um, so when I leaked first, I had told my husband and he had called the midwife.
Okay.
So when she waited, she waited till to cut the umbilical cord till it stopped throbbing. She waited till then, and so we didn't immediately cut the cord. Um,
Hmm.
Later, I got to know about using a stone, of carrying the placenta, all that I got to know later of how of whatever people uh, used to eat, not eat because nobody likes to eat a placenta. They make a soup out of it and
Or
they
a
consume it.
smoothie.
All that
Yeah.
that information I got later.
And
As
it was
far
there at
as
that time as well. You got to know about it then.
later I got to know about this placenta, this thing,
Hmm.
women having later. Later, had I
Hmm.
known, maybe I would have also kind of tried to uh,
Hmm.
keep it
But not much
reserved.
later, like right around that time, maybe a gap of 5, 6 years or so.
Later, with friends with whom I had discussions on this, and who had also were interested in this way of birthing, that I got to know. I don't
Hmm.
remember, maybe a year, 2 years later after she was born, a year after
Hmm.
she was born.
Hmm. I was just asking because it seems so new and gross to people, and all these things, and especially the article that you sent me yesterday, was also something that it seems so apt for today's world. It's not something that you know things haven't changed much.
So, that all this medical intervention started maybe 50s, 60s. So, I have received vaccinations. I
Hmm.
was born in a hospital. Um, so, in fact, now, with your generation, there is more awareness now, I feel. There are Facebook pages on mothers breastfeeding. There are mm, people are talking of natural births. There's this birth village in Kerala in Goa. There was this person who was performing natural births, and lotus births and water births. People are talking about. So there's more awareness now. We
Hmm.
went by intuition. I mean, I went by intuition. Did not feel it was right at that time. Uh, what happened with my C-section? I felt it was quite unnecessary. Uh, and the midwife who came to me to help me uh, came from the slums. So when I asked her, what should I do to prepare for this birth? She said, nothing, just an old sari, she said. So I didn't have an old sari, I had an old towel on which I sat and did the birthing and did the squatting.
Hmm.
Um, and it was later at night, on the seventh night, that uh, we realized we didn't have a blade to cut the umbilical cord. Um so at 10 o'clock at night, my husband went and bought a blade. So that was the only equipment we had, a blade and a towel. That is it. So, and the reference that I had was Hindi films when they show a woman entering into labor and they prepare for hot water. So I kept asking him, but are you sure you don't want hot water? Are you sure we don't need hot water? She says, no, we don't need anything. Um,
Hmm.
the other, I don't know if I should say it here, the other experience that I had was when I helped a woman to give birth to her child when I was traveling by train. So at Santa Cruz station in Bombay, the train had stopped. So I asked a passerby, what happened? Why is the train not going ahead? He said, "Bacha hua hai." Uh, uh, in the next compartment. So I peeped from the grill that separated my compartment from the next, and I saw that people were just standing around a woman whose legs I could see. So I jumped
Hmm.
out of the train and went to the compartment, and I put my ear next to the woman, and I heard her baby crying. At least that guy also said that the one can hear the baby cry. So
Hmm.
I heard the baby cry, and I know that the head comes out first. I mean, I was doing my masters, and I was on the way to the university at that time.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I heard the baby cry. So outside, and she was lying down on the floor of the train. So I tried to feel for the child's hands and feet. I felt that everything was there. So then I summoned police and got a stretcher. So took her to the nearest hospital, the Asha Parekh hospital that was at Santa Cruz, where we took her. And there they refused to admit her. So I went to the registrar and said, on human grounds, you should attend to her. So, I mean, that is what my understanding was hospital, at that time.
Yeah, they are for our
So,
safety. So,
So they kind of attended to her. He said, okay, we'll do what is needed, but we won't give her a birth certificate. I said, fine, just kind of attend to her. So they did, and the child was already born, but they just needed to clean her up and all that, so, which they did. So I saw to that, and then I left my number, my address with her. Uh, and I went home 3 months after that episode. She came to visit me along with her husband and her two other children she had. Um, because they needed a birth certificate. The hospital there refused to give her a birth certificate. Now, who
hmm,
gives a birth certificate? Who is the authority to give a birth certificate? The station master. So we went to the station, the railway station again, along with them. I took them to Santa Cruz station. Luckily, it was the same station master and he issued the birth certificate. So that was my little experience with birding. And like I said, whatever they showed in films. The rest was the learnings that I got by visiting women, not visiting, meeting women and talking to them and trying to understand the natural process from these women who were not, I would say, spoiled by the system.
hmm,
So yeah, and then the other thing, after my daughter's born, the vernix, we do not wash her up immediately, let the vernix get absorbed into the body. Breastfed her. I breastfed her exclusively for almost a year. I thought at least 1 year she should not be given anything, was my understanding. But she started grabbing food from our hands. So that's when it's time to also give. So she started grabbing it for giving her. But
hmm,
breastfeeding went on for a while. There was no question of vaccinating. There was no question of taking her to any gynecologist, pediatrician, because that is how it was for 8 years before she was born with my son. I fed her till she was, with my son, I stopped when he was about 2 years old.
hmm,
And uh, so stopped, and I mean, I bandaged on my breast and said, sorry. And that upset me so much that I had stopped it, that he hadn't stopped. That with my daughter, I said, I'm going to allow her to have till she stops. So
hmm.
it went on for over 6 years. She was,
Wow.
yeah, she was having. And see, it's not that they have it every time. It's like when they want to go to sleep or discomfort. I have it that for it's they feel comforted. Um, uh, they, they get this warmth from the mother. So it's for those reasons. And then gradually it got lesser and lesser. Uh, and then one day, I mean, then it's lesser. It just, I don't know when it stopped, how it just was a natural process.
Hmm,
So,
hmm.
yeah, my daughter's now 29 years old. I hope she wouldn't get angry that I'm talking about breastfeeding. Uh, no, that's it. Anything
Hmm.
else?
Yeah, I do want to ask you, how did the contractions feel to you? Were they really intense?
They
When
were
did they
like
get intense?
severe period pains, very severe period pains.
Hmm,
That was the feeling.
hmm,
The there was it was they were very severe. The small of my back would really uh, be in pain. I've heard of people having um, deliveries without pain, and I know there are women, African women, no meaning I've read about them who go behind the bush and they deliver, and but I had a lot of pain during the contractions.
hmm,
Perhaps it was because I had a C-section previously. Uh, Perhaps because it was small pelvis. See, if you go to see um, why women have C-sections, many of the reasons are age related, small pelvis, previous C-sections,
Mm.
uh, vertical incision. So all those odds were stacked against me.
Mm.
Yes, long labor, but at no point during my labor did I feel I should go and use what are the forceps and get the baby out. At no point. So always say that a lot of the deliveries take place in the minds of women. If you feel, if you believe, if every part of you believes that you will deliver naturally, you will deliver. Because then every core of your being is prepared for that delivery.
Mm.
To let your body kind of make this happen. So I just wanted to bring Zui into the world the way she was, in the sense, without any interference.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's how she was born. Yeah, so the expense that was incurred was on some glass bangles, because that's the tradition of giving glass bangles to the midwife, a sari, and token amount of money. And so we did that.
Mm.
It was like
You
less than
told
a
me,
thousand rupees.
yeah, you told me that everybody, like, she kind of didn't ask for anything a lot. She just said, "Give me."
No, no,
Uh,
no.
mm,
In fact, maybe I gave her a little more. I was told also, see, if see, this was also something that we discussed with my friend. She said, if you see, she helping women in the slums, and we should stick to their tradition. So in fact, I was told to give her 201 or something, but I gave her 500.
mm,
So so she did not ask for more at all. And first we picked her up and dropped her. Um, Her daughter has learned. By the way, the midwife is no longer alive, and her
mm,
daughter has learned these skills. But the midwife told, but the daughter, I think she told me that I do not know um, the health of the child the way my mother understands it. Her mother's hands, kind of, when she felt a woman with her hands, she would know how healthy the child was. And
mm,
she did tell me that in the 1,000 births that she had performed, there was just this one child who had some defect. And she said that the mother was all not healthy. And told, I did say that there might be a health issue with this child. So apparently the eyes were not in their right place or something like that. So
mm,
that was just this one case she had told about.
mm,
And what was really great about the midwife that I had is that she was quiet. She didn't hurry me up. She did not scare me at all. Did not put any fear in my head. Only towards the end, when the labor went on and on, she said, "Push,
mm.
you know, push you want the it's like now really push." She said. So that is it. That was my experience with birthing my daughter, Zoe.
Yeah.
And
Just one more question that I had on my mind was like, was it on your due date? Was it before your due date? Did you have a due date, or you just went with the flow?
mm, I'll tell you what my son had a due date.
Hmm.
And perhaps, and there was a little pain in my lower back on the due date. So I don't know if it's good idea to give a due date.
It's not a good idea to give a due date. Hmm.
So might have been false labor. That one, the C-section one, might have been. Now that I think back, I don't remember if there was a due date with my daughter.
Mm.
Perhaps it
Okay.
was. I'm not very clear. 1 week after it is something that not very. I don't remember very well. But I
Mm.
remember that with my son there was a due date, and that I did experience, or I thought I experienced, labor at that time. So now that you're asking me, I don't know if it's a good idea to have a due date,
It's not a good idea.
because
We
there's pain. You go into labor. That is it.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
you can start imagining that there is pain, like I might have imagined the first
Mm.
time.
Mm. Actually, women go into labor when the body is ready, and there's a lot of fuss around.
Absolutely. Yeah, when it's time, you're going to labor. Um, yeah, I was 37 when I gave birth to her, to Zoe, and 29 for my son. So there was an 8 year gap.
Hmm.
So, I also heard of a woman publisher who gave birth to at the age of 46. And in women in the past, yeah, at the age of 46. But women in the past, they kept giving birth till they had their periods. So, you know, my fathers had one of 9 siblings, my mother's one of 8 siblings. So in the past, people did that. Now we kind of don't do that. It's been one or two
Hmm.
children.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear around our bodies are aging, we are aging. There's something will happen to me or the baby just because I'm
Yes, it's
aging.
the
It's not
times we
about.
live in. That's true. It's the times we live in. It's the diets the food that we're consuming. It's the lifestyle that we have adopted. See, where that is concerned, I mean, even now, I kind of, try to consume as much raw. In fact, when I conceived Zui, I did not know I had conceived because I was eating so many mangoes, I was eating a lot of fruit. So, when you do that, your periods are also scant. You see, a lot of women now have long periods and painful ones, is because the body is trying to get rid of matter through the periods because of a diet which we are biologically not meant to consume. You know, we do
Hmm.
not eat our species-specific food. We don't do food combining. There is no sequential eating. So, though that kind of understanding is not there. So, but I was that part I was taking care. I wasn't eating anything at all, and mm, so my diet was pretty all right. Okay, used to eat cooked food as well, but a
Hmm.
lot of raw.
Hmm. Yeah, it's about individual diet and health than your age or a number or a due date. Um, and there goes a lot of faith in the body that comes with birth. Birth is free. It's not supposed to be a strong push on your pocket or having children as well, other than the basic needs. But times have changed, yes, and your story will really help people see that things were no different in the medical world back in those days, and you chose to take a path that was closer to who you are than what it served the medical business aspect of the birthing. So yeah, thank you so much, Vanita ji.
Thank you.
There is a field beyond fear, where the body is empowered to take on labor and birth. To land there, it is crucial to take birth education. To enroll into our unique labor and birth preparation course, reach out to us at www.birthagni.com or scroll through all available prenatal and postnatal preparation classes. Thank you for listening, all in the spirit of birth, womanhood, and freedom. Remember, you got the power. This podcast is about physiological birth and does not offer or claim to provide medical knowledge or diagnosis.